Welcome, everyone. Happy Digital Wellness Day. I'm Amy Blinkson. I'm the co-founder of the Digital Wellness Institute and Digital Wellness Day, and I am thrilled to get to be part of this special panel. We all know it's been a year since the cascading effects of COVID-19 and the pandemic began to shut down businesses, and the economies all over the world experienced this accelerated shift to remote work. But this story today is particularly important and very special because this is a story of what happened at IBM when in March 2020, the IBMers shifted about 95% of its 345,000 employees to work from home in just a matter of days. And as thousands of these employees transitioned to working from home, IBMers Paul Pappas, Molly Vannucci, and Monica Logan and others began to have these open discussions about the challenges of taking care of family members and taking care of themselves while managing all of their work responsibilities. And so after receiving feedback from IBMers all over the world, they decided to take action and they created something called the IBM Work from Home Pledge. Now today we have joining us Paul, Molly, and Monica, who are going to discuss their experience in kind of co-creating this pledge and how it's going today and what they've learned from the process. But first, I want to take an opportunity. I want to introduce you to Paul, Molly, and Monica with their backgrounds. So Paul Pappas is the global managing partner of IBM's Business Transformation Services. He leads a global team who helps the world's largest organizations navigate disruption and reinvent their businesses by design using exponential technologies like cloud, AI, blockchain, and more. Paul has led the launch and the global scaling of several IBM businesses, including the company's enterprise strategy consulting services and IBM X. He's part of the Women's IBM Executive Council, IBM Industry Academy Advisory Board, the United Way of New York City, Children's Defense Fund, the New York Historical Society, IBM's P-Tech program, just to name a few. He's amazing. And when Paul isn't helping businesses to transform during the pandemic, he's a huge Broadway fan, and he is ready for it to return this year. Now, our second panelist is Molly Vannucci. She's a partner in IBM's Business Transformation Services as well. She also serves as Paul's chief of staff, where she's responsible for managing strategic and operational programs to support business growth. Molly also loves to give back. She's a member of IBM's Women Executive Council, a member of several IBM policy change initiatives, including IBM's menstrual support policy, family leave policy changes, and of course, the work from home pledge. Molly is drawn to the outdoors, whether she's exploring the city with her sister or on the golf course, trail riding, or spending time with family and friends. And our third and final panelist is Monica Logan, who is a senior partner as well in IBM's Business Transformation Services. She works at the intersection of strategy, human-centered design, and transformative technology. She has 2 decades of consulting and plays a key role in strategic planning, incubating business areas, driving day-to-day business management. Last year, Monica was named IBM Working Mother of the Year by Working Mother, and she's a passionate advocate for our people and an active member of the IBM diversity and inclusion efforts, including Embrace and the Women's Executive Council. She can also be seen wearing the Be Inclusive shirt today. She's modeling, and we're grateful for her leadership in that domain. When Monica isn't incubating new businesses, she likes to spend time with their family, watching them watch their favorite teams compete or just relaxing as well. So with that background, you now know that we are surrounded by numerous rock stars who have created and forged a path to dealing with the pandemic in a very positive culture way. And so I want to kick off today. Paul, if you could share with us a little bit about the IBM Work from Home Pledge and maybe even show us what that pledge looks like.
Yeah, let's bring it up, and I'll tell you kind of the story of how it came to be. And I can't believe it's already like 14 months into this. So back 14 months ago, as you mentioned, when COVID started kind of spilling out and kind of moving out all over the world, exactly what you said is exactly what happened. We had to move 95% of our people to work from home, many of whom who had never worked from home before. And that was in every country that we operate in around the world. That's 170 different countries for us around the world. So what we started noticing is, the fact that something was really profoundly different in our work experience. Aside from the fact that, hey, we changed location, we're in the services business, so we provide consulting services to our clients. All of us know the crazy lifestyle that consulting has. We're always traveling to our clients. We're working round the clock on crazy deadlines. So we're not unaccustomed to working hard, working long. But when we started all working from home, we quickly found something was different. Like we were tired in a different way. Like we were mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted by this. And the three of us here, myself, Molly, Monica, just started talking as we do every day about like what we're going through and like why does it, trying to figure out why this feels so different. And then we started getting and hearing the stories from our teams who were experiencing the same thing and navigating the challenges of being at home. And the stories and the listening were really the genesis of this pledge for us. So we started hearing particularly from working moms, which is really kind of where the focus of the pledge started, on working women and working moms who were disproportionately bearing the burden of the upended lifestyle that everyone had. So like some of the stories that we heard, there was a female executive on our team. She's getting ready for a client presentation in the morning. It's a early call at 7:30 a.m. It's an important client, so she wants to be on camera, which means she had to get up extra early to get ready for it. By the way, she just had a newborn, so she has a baby who's literally a toddler, less than 1 year old, and she's trying to like get ready and change the baby at the same time. And she knows that the meeting's about to start with the client, and she turns away for 1 second, and the baby rolls off the changing table. And and it was because she was so focused on making sure that she doesn't disappoint her client that it just happened in a split second. And the baby was okay, thank God. But we were talking as a team. It's like this pressure that we're all putting on ourselves to make sure that we can get in front of the camera. We have to be on video. There's a meeting starting. And then we started hearing more stories of like, one of the members of our team, she's got 10-year-old triplets who are absolutely adorable. But she came to us and she just raised her hand and said, I can't do this. I can't be on WebEx calls with the team all day, every day, every hour of the day, and homeschool 3 kids at the same time. It's just physically impossible for me to be tethering and kind of pivoting from all of that. So it was story after story of that. And like if we just bring back up the pledge, I'll just kind of link those stories to how everything got created. So the first part of the pledge says, we pledge to be family sensitive, and that was born out of the story of the toddler rolling off a changing table. Like we put family first. Don't jeopardize your health and safety. I know we have this kind of invisible connection to like if you're on camera you can't move off camera, but just like please just stop the camera, stop the WebEx, and take care of the family and those in your home. The second part of the pledge was born out of that story of our colleague with 3 triplets. It's like, hey, everyone needs time, because we also had stories of folks, if you remember back 14 months ago, that folks who needed to leave at a certain time of the day, and we were all doing this. I live in New York City, so it's like you knew that the grocery delivery truck, in your local store got there on Monday night. So if you didn't get to the supermarket on Tuesday morning by 10 a.m., a lot of things were going to be sold out. So people needed to take that time off in wherever they were living to just go buy groceries, or tend to aging parents that were now stuck at home and also couldn't travel. So that flexibility for personal needs was born out of those stories. The not camera ready times. This was born out of a recognition that there are days we wake up and we're just not feeling it. I have many of those days, and I was on a call and someone was just saying, and he was doing this kind of semi jokingly, but like, hey, everyone, I don't see you. Like, we're here for a meeting. Please turn your camera on. But Paul, turn your camera on. I want to see you. And it's like person by person, almost like shaming people to turn their cameras on. And it was done for good intent. He literally just wanted to see everyone and kind of make sure we have like a human connection. But it was just putting pressure on us. This is a time where we don't need any more pressure in our lives. So it's like, this pledge about not being camera ready. It's like, if you're not camera ready, keep that camera off and don't feel any pressure. If there's an early call, a late call, this is one of those days where, you woke up, you didn't shave, you just don't, you don't want to be on camera. Don't be on camera. There's no pressure of any kind, and then the next part of the pledge was a simple one, right? Pledging to be kind. This sounds really simple, but it was a recognition that we wanted people to remember that we're showing up in each other's homes, likely for the first time. So let's act accordingly. Let's act as guests in each other's homes. I have a virtual background on today, but there are times where people were, I remember when this first started, like they were looking like, oh, what's that on your wall? Or, hey, how come you don't have, hey, where are you? Like, it looks like you're in a closet or something. It's a very dark room you're in. It's like, yeah, we don't have professional studios in our homes. It's like, we weren't expecting this. So would you say that if you were a guest in someone's home, would you point out something that wasn't perfect? No. So let's make sure we're acting like guests. And part of being guests in each other's home is things are going to happen unexpectedly. The kids are going to run in the middle of a meeting. The dogs always seem to be on cue. They're quiet all day, right until a meeting starts, and they're quiet during the meeting, right until the person has to talk. And that's when they really just jump into action. So, part of this pledge of being kind is don't make people self-conscious about that. Welcome them into the family. Welcome them onto the call. We're all in this together. So those are some of the stories of how each of the individual elements of the pledge kind of came to be. And I'll just take a pause here and kind of, turn it back over to you, turn it back over to Molly and Monica, and then we could talk a little bit more about how we actually got it, published and the story of how it went viral across IBM in a little bit.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Paul. And what an incredible narrative and way to show leadership, not only within IBM, but also to model for other companies around the globe who are struggling and trying to figure out how to deal with this sort of work life, home life soup that we're all living in together. And I love the story about the baby on the changing table that you mentioned, because it's so poignant, so relatable. We're all grateful that baby is okay. But at any moment, it could be a hot pan on a stove. It could be, an elderly parent or anything going on in your background. There's always something. So having that compassion is powerful. Molly and Monica, I'd love to hear from you two as well about why you got involved in this and how your involvement started.
Well, first of all, as Paul said, the three of us work together every day, and always, we're family. They're stuck with me at this point. But really, no matter what we're working on, whether it's something strategic or operational or something related to one of our diversity and inclusion initiatives or this pledge, we always work together to make sure things are the best that they can be. And we pressure test things and we run ideas by each other. And I think really that's how the pledge started evolving. And Paul was having some of these conversations and started putting pen to paper. It started out as like, here are some guidelines that we could publish. And when we kept kind of, adding things to it and iterating on the wording, it really just started evolving more into a pledge. Like, let's just encourage others to take this pledge and let's see if we can start modeling some of this behavior and share it. And, really just by sharing it within the organization, it went viral. And I think because so many people really resonated with it and felt the connection to it and felt seen and heard with it.
Yeah, I think Molly, for me, it was similar in that obviously we started to hear the stories and then we put this together. And I think Molly, you put it in that I pledge type format. And I mean, for me, when I first saw it, I mean, it just really resonated from the standpoint of I had been thinking, how am I going to do all of this? And people were actually acting as if everything was fine from a work perspective, and they were almost really separating their work life from their personal life. And in reality, that wasn't where we were, right? Things were in a different place. And so when I saw the pledge the first time, and then we started to iterate on it, it just felt like somebody understood what was really going on. It was just a certain authenticity around the pledge. And I really let out a sigh of relief, almost like, gosh, somebody gets it. Now, how can we make sure this is even stronger and better for our teams? And that's what we did. We rolled up our sleeves, and we're really fortunate in that we have global roles. So we were able to hear a lot of different viewpoints around the pledge and weave those in to make sure we were being, it was really a responsibility for us to be honest and true to what they told us. And that was what we were most proud of.
And just building on that, Amy, one of the things that we uncovered during this was the amount of pressure we put on ourselves. And that I think this was one of the revelations for us in coming up with this. So even before COVID hit, even before we all had to work from home, it's like the pressure of any time during the workday that you have to take time off to do something personal, whether it's for a child or an elderly parent or just yourself, to tend to a health issue or whatever it is, that there's this guilt we have about having to like do something that's about us, when we should be, we should be working, we should be in service to our clients, and I shared with the team that, I have two elderly parents, and there were times where I would have to like, take time off during the day to like take them to a doctor's appointment. But I would never put on my calendar, like, Paul taking parents to a doctor's appointment. I would just block that time off because there was something about it that I felt guilty about. Now, it didn't matter that I was working till like 3 o'clock in the morning that day. It was like, but that time during the day, I still felt guilty that I was blocking that time off for me, to do something that was personal. And I think the point that Monica and Molly were on was that people felt seen when they read the pledge. It's like that, it's almost felt like you're giving me permission to like give myself the space. And that was something that was just very special about it, that people felt like they could have that like exhale, like, you know what? I don't have to feel guilty about the fact that I have to homeschool my kids and take time off in the afternoon. I don't have to feel guilty about it. I have to go take care of my parents. I don't have to feel guilty about this. I'm not going to put that guilt on myself. And it was just releasing all of that energy in a positive way that we found that was just being kind of trapped up there. And a lot of it self-imposed, because the minute you ask someone, it's like, hey, is it okay if I I'm going to take off a couple hours? Like, of course, just go. Don't even ask. Just go do it. So that was definitely a learning for us during this process.
Yeah, I mean, your words have so much power there, because I think we resonate, and there's that guilt, the pressure, the sense of, oh, this is what a responsible employee would be doing, and feeling bad about not full transparency. But if you are transparent, then would you be judged? It's a tricky situation. And I think part of why I love what you did with the work from home pledge is that you gave words and intention to practices that create a culture that is more positive, that is allowing. And I think sometimes organizations are hesitant to put things into words because of a couple of reasons. One is you don't have the words. What do you say? What do you do? How do you make this global? And then second would be, once you put it in words, then you're held accountable for it. So, I don't want to write it down, but you didn't stop there. You wrote it down, and it filtered all the way up to the CEO of IBM. So tell that story. I just love hearing how this emerged and why IBM decided to write down the pledge.
Yeah, I'll kick us off, and I'll let Monica and Molly jump in, because that the difficulty of putting things down to words and getting those words right, particularly in a global company. Well, one, the three of us are perfectionists, and the group that we work with is a set of perfectionists. So it's like,
That's a bit of an understatement.
Yeah, it wouldn't be uncommon for like, any one of us to wake up in the middle of the night and be like, that word in the fourth sentence underneath that part of the pledge, and where I said boundaries, like, I think we should change it to this, or I think people might misinterpret it to that, or I think it has more power if it's this. And it's just about getting the intent clear. But then also, there was a great part of this was, a lot of times when you work in a big company, you can feel like, oh my God, you've got this big organization, and it slow you down, and you need approval for all these things before you can publish anything or anything like that. And we actually flipped the script on this. The reason why this was so great for us is that we said, we're not publishing like an IBM policy on how everyone needs to govern themselves when they work from home, and these are the rules you must follow. This was a set of principles. It was like, how do we treat each other, and how can we make life just a little bit easier for each other? And it's optional. You could choose to pledge, you can choose not to pledge, you can choose to read it and just do it yourself without publicly declaring your pledge. And so we just kind of put the power in the hands of the people on this, to interpret it as you will, use it as you will. Again, the intent is to make life just a little bit easier. So what we did was to make it available to everyone. It actually just started with my organization inside of IBM, and it started with one email. So we sent one email. We said, hey, we know we're all wrestling with the challenges of working from home. A group of us got together, and we came up with this pledge about how we can help make life a little bit easier for each other. And here's a Slack channel where the pledge is. So if you're so inclined, read it and take the pledge. And we posted it, and it started like shining like a jackpot machine. Slack was just like people just pinging it in the pledge, and cutting and pasting the pledge, and typing in their own pledges. and then sharing it with other people. So it started growing outside of our organization. And ultimately, like we're just like, where all these people come from? We had one group translate the pledge into Hebrew. It was translated into multiple languages, and it was just, we weren't doing anything at this point other than that first email and just watching the Slack channel and crying with joy. Just that how special this was, as kind of the thousands of people that were just taking the pledge rolled up. And ultimately the number of people that were taking this pledge got the attention of our CEO. And I sit on one of his management teams, the performance team here at IBM. And he brought this up during one of the discussions, and he said, are you folks familiar with this thing that's kind of going on in our organization where everyone's taking this pledge for working from home? And a bunch of his leaders had actually seen it, had taken the pledge themselves. A bunch of their teams had taken it, and they were just super supportive. And he was so excited about it, so happy that it was a grassroots thing, and that it was having this positive impact, that he went on LinkedIn and posted it and took the pledge. As the CEO of IBM, I'm taking the pledge. And I think we put the link here in the chat, so everyone can go to the LinkedIn post and see the actual pledge also. And that was just a special moment that he would do that. And then he also spoke to CNN about it. And it's actually, the pledge is in our annual report this year. So we're just the three of us and the extended team that worked on it with us. There are folks that aren't on the call today. They're in Arvin's post: Nancy Kramer, Dominique Dubois, Debbie Pavangas, and so many others that helped us with this. It was a grassroots effort that started with one email and one Slack post internally.
It always starts with one small action, but I can see the pride and the joy of having been a part of something that made a difference and that got recognized by other people for the value that it brought to everyone. I mean, that's incredible. It's certainly something to be remembered for your professional career, I'm sure. It's been a year now since the pledge was first created. And I guess this question, let's give to you, Molly. What's changed in the year since you wrote the pledge to what you're seeing now within IBM?
So I think, first of all, the thing that's been really surprising to me is, well, one, how long this pandemic is going on. So I think when we first wrote it, I don't know if we knew it was going to have legs this long. But I don't think a day goes by that I don't see someone share the post in LinkedIn or recommit to it. Someone that pings me at IBM about the pledge, or mentioning something about the pledge on a call. I mean, it's just about every day I hear or see something about it. And to me, I think that it's wonderful in so many ways, but particularly because we're all not living up to every aspect of the pledge every day. But the fact that we continue talking about it, and the fact that when we look at it, all the items in it are still relevant today, it reminds us, right? It is okay to be off camera. It is okay when you want to take a call out for a walk instead of at your computer. We need kind of the constant reminder, because it is over a year later that we're still dealing with this. And this mental fatigue, this COVID fatigue, it is real. And I love that it's enduring with our people and giving them, the reminder that they need, that it's okay to be doing the things you need to do. We're all professionals. We know you're going to do your job and do it well. And you need to set the boundaries you need to be, keep yourself, your family healthy and safe.
That's beautiful. So that's the 1-year check-in. And Monica, I'll turn it over to you. Looking forward to the future now. What do you see that may need to shift within the pledge, if anything, or what do you think will happen in the future if you could look in a crystal ball with the pledge?
Yeah, I think for the pledge, so I think really it started as a set of principles, as we said, but now it's part of our values, and that's really powerful. And so when you say, would I change anything, and I've reflected several times, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change, for me personally, I wouldn't change a thing. It resonates, but it resonates beyond this space we're in now. It resonates in terms of how I, as a professional, want to live my corporate life. How do I want to show up? How do I want to be authentic and bring my whole self to work? The pledge, identifies some of that, especially as a working mom. How do I want to navigate all of that? I think the other thing is, different parts of the world are in a different place as it relates to what we're dealing with COVID. And we have to be cognizant of that and recognize that just because one part of the world is getting the vaccine and making progress, other parts are not. And so when we think about our colleagues in India and think about colleagues in other locations, it just reinforces the need to live these values. I had someone come the other day and mention about, oh my gosh, I have to be on camera for something. Oh my gosh, I have to go do something. And like, well, and I and I and I said, well, why do you feel that way? Haven't you seen the pledge? And so it's a reinforcing that it wasn't just that moment in time. It's now part of how we should operate. And I know that's what we do in our group, and that's what we would encourage those that, have taken a hold of the pledge to do.
Yeah, I like your idea that this has become part of the DNA of the organization, that deep value system. And I think that goes along so well with the shift of moving from, a period of industrialization where people worked like assembly lines and everything was fairly methodical, to returning to the workplace of people, of humans, like working in a more human way, recognizing all of the challenges we face, but also some of the humanness of error, of weird things happening in the background, and surprises, and dogs barking, and mails being delivered, and lawnmowers going off, and all these things. This is part of life, and maybe a different vision for what's going forward in the future. I think of the people who are tuning in here today, they're probably wondering in their minds, this is so wonderful that IBM is doing this. How can I create something similar for my organization? So Paul, this question is for you. How can other leaders begin to spur momentum and grassroots change within their organization, regardless of where they sit in the organization?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think one of our learnings, because the three of us were kind of partners in crime, we've done a few different things inside of IBM, as you mentioned in kind of Molly's introduction there. The menstrual support policy and other changes that we champion in our organization, and it all starts at the same place: listening. Just listening. Listen for what are people really experiencing, and some of the challenges, and recognizing that those challenges may not be the same challenges that you have, but they're real and they're important. And a lot of times, like what we have learned as a team is that sometimes the things that haven't been changed yet in an organization is because no one has just taken the time to actually stop to try to change them. It's just like, it's like accepted as a given that, oh, we don't do that here, or no, we would never, allow that or support something like that here. Really? Has anyone ever asked? Has anyone ever tried? Well, why don't we do that? They say maybe ignorance is the better part of valor, right? So, and I think we're pretty brave when it comes to like asking for change or looking to make a change. So that first step was listening. That's where all of the change initiatives that we have driven in the organization start. The second step is actually not seeking permission. So this is something we're going to do. Like I said, in the case of a pledge, we weren't looking to like adopt a formal policy or change something. We didn't need legal review of something. We're not signing an employment contract or asking people to do. No, it's a very simple thing. It's like you can opt in, and this alone can make a big change. And the third thing I would say is kind of role modeling the behavior. So it's if I were to show up and say, hey, turn your cameras on, how come I can't see you all? After being part of the effort to leading the effort to drive right to the pledge itself, it would really be disingenuous, right? So kind of putting those principles into action are things that we have seen in terms of ways to make change. And we encourage, like we publish this and put it out there. So there's other folks from other companies who have asked me, from time to time, hey, can I leverage this? Can I use this? It's like, take it, use it as is, change it as you want. We weren't kind of copywriting the pledge or looking to constrain it. It was a simple goal of how can we make life just a little bit easier for each other in this. So that was really kind of the story of what I think how people can drive this or use this as an example, hopefully, of driving change in their organization.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm going to invite people to start thinking about questions. We're going to do Q&A here in just a little bit, but I want you to start thinking about questions that you have for Molly and Monica and Paul that might be more specific questions about how you can implement something like the work from home pledge in your company, or some of the intricacies of what it takes to enact a pledge. But while people are writing in their questions, and for those of you unfamiliar with WebEx, if you are in the panel to the right, there is a Q&A box that you can maximize or open up, and you can send in your questions that way so we can track along with you. But while people are writing in their questions and thinking about it, Molly, a question for you is, during the last year with the pandemic, I'm curious if there was anything that was particularly challenging to you, either personally or professionally, and how did the pledge help with that? I see Paul smiling, so I think there's a good story here. I'm excited.
Wait till you hear what Molly navigated during the pandemic. God bless her. I mean, it's wow.
I mean, how much time do we have? Yeah, I mean, last year it was a challenging year. I broke my foot the day before I went into, mandatory lockdown in New York City, and I live in a small fourth floor walk up in Manhattan, so that was fun. Difficult to get out of the apartment with a boot and non-weight bearing. And then about 2 weeks, yeah, I guess it was about 2 weeks later, a friend of mine and her 10-year-old son came to stay with me. He needed to get treatment at Memorial Sloan Kettering for cancer that this adorable 10-year-old boy was dealing with, that you can only get at Memorial Sloan Kettering. He couldn't receive it locally. And so all of a sudden I found, opening my small New York City apartment to a friend and a 10-year-old boy while I'm, in a boot trying to work in a pandemic. And then they stayed with me, I think, for about a month twice, a month each time. And then in June, my mother was diagnosed with cancer and had to come up to New York. So I was working with her to kind of, go through the testing, treatments, set her and my dad, who eventually came up, set them up in an apartment in New York City with furniture and all the like. I've got, I'm now down in Florida where both my parents are dealing with cancer diagnoses and treatment of that. And it's, it just keeps coming. But because of, I think, because of the pledge, because of this incredible team that I work with every day, you get through it. You can deal with these things coming at you.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about the challenges that you were facing over the last year. I can't imagine. And,
But I mean, everyone has something. And I think, as Paul talked about the listening, like when you ask anyone on our team, what's going on with your life, everyone has a story just like this, right? Of stuff that they're dealing with, whether it's with their children, elderly parents, just being alone. A lot of people dealing with loneliness and mental health as a result of being so isolated. So everyone is dealing with something. But I'm just sharing mine so that others feel comfortable sharing what they're dealing with, because I think it helps when you've got such a great support system and you get through it all.
Such a great.
Also, Amy, Molly's really competitive. So, everyone has a story. She felt like she needed to have like 5 stories
Super one.
to deal with.
Very true.
It wasn't enough just to have one.
Yeah, I mean, the stories that I've heard, because in my other hat, I speak about fearless positivity, and I've had the privilege of hearing so many stories of brave people who have faced some incredible challenges over the last year. And I almost hesitate to share mine, but because mine is nothing like so many others. But I will say that between March and April, from when the pandemic was announced, in about 3 weeks, my husband was in a car accident, and then the air conditioner went out, the water heater went out, the car broke down, it had to get a whole new engine, and then termites came, and then after the termites came rats. I kid you not, there were rats, and I was like, okay, I'm done. What is out there right now? but we get through it. Like you said, it's all about social support. And when we look back, we have this opportunity to tell a new narrative about what we've been through. What kind of story do we want to share? And I think the story and the narrative of what's happened at IBM is one that I want to like hold, and I want to hold up for other people, because I think it does have that enduring power. Um, you know, I want to also bring in and Monica here for a second. And I'm curious, you know, we've let Molly share her story, but are there learning lessons that you've had, Monica, experiences that you want to share, or things that you feel like have changed your narrative or your viewpoint on the world going forward?
Sure. I love your comment on fearless positivity. I have to go read some of that because I am an optimist to regardless. And I think this pandemic really tested that, because it's easy to be an optimist whenever, the sun is shining and everything's great. And I think has tested that and proven to me, I really, the value of perspective and just understanding that my worst day is probably better than, a lot of people that are out there, and just realizing that every day is a gift. I would also say that one of the things I've really learned, and this is part of the pledge as well, is just the importance of checking in on people. I've got teenage daughters, they all have friends, and the pandemic has affected that generation a little bit differently. And so we've had scenarios with people that are struggling with mental health, with depression, and those are new things for me that to have to deal with, and to have to be around, and to realize how to educate myself to support others. So, I think with the pandemic, we are all opening ourselves up to new learning experiences. And I think some of those conversations on things like mental health were not at the forefront before, especially in certain populations and certain groups. It's just kind of a little bit of a stigma, or people weren't you comfortable talking about it. Now it's more open. So I do think we'll have some positive things on that front coming forward as we proceed out of this.
Thank you, Monica. I see we have a question in our chat that I want to raise up here from MCK Keefrider. And the question, she said, I've loved hearing the story of the pledge. I'm quite moved by such a human approach to navigating these crazy Corona times. I'm curious if there's a line or a particular line of the pledge that speaks to you a little deeper or differently than the other parts. And I'd love to hear that from each one of you about, if there's a particular one that really stands out for you.
Let's go in reverse order. Monica, when you go first, Molly, you go second. I'll go third.
Okay. So I will go. I pledge to support not camera ready times. I have to, because, let's face it, if you have calls late in the day, I could be doing something with dinner where pots and pans may be involved. If you have something in the middle of the day, I just had a visitor come up, slid her power cable pretty on the side so nobody would know. But if this was a normal IBM call, I would invite her in and say, hey, say hi to everybody. And so I think that tells you the dynamic has changed quite a bit. So for me, for that one, I try to role model that behavior. So there's an etiquette almost where when one person cuts their camera on, everybody like one after with the other. So I leave mine off, you know what I mean? So it's trying to role model that behavior and let you know that we're all sometimes multitasking, and you've got to have that freedom to do what you need to do.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go the other video related one where it's like I pledge to set boundaries and prevent video fatigue, because the thing that I probably think about every day is I set up all of the meetings from my calendar for instead of 30 minutes or 25 minutes. And instead of an hour, I'll do 50 minutes or 45 minutes. But holding to that is really difficult because everyone knows you don't have another call for another 5 minutes. So you go 5 minutes longer. But it makes a world of difference in my day if I've got that 5 minutes where I could get a refill on my beverage. I could go to the bathroom. I could, actually write down my notes from that meeting. What are the things I have to go do, and get organized for my next meeting. That 5-10 minute buffer in between makes a world of difference. And it's really hard to stick to, but it's something I work on every day because when I actually do it, it makes my life easier, and I know it makes everyone else that was in those meetings easier.
So for me, the part and
You're welcome for not taking yours.
yeah.
I know which one you're going to go with.
So for me, and my team knows, it's one that I've actually had the most difficulty with. And if I were like grading myself on the pledge, it's the one that I'm failing at the most, which is I pledge to take care of myself. That one has been the singular hardest one for me. And I remember when we were writing it, there's one part of the pledge under where I pledge to take care of myself. It says, I will make it a priority to take care of my physical and mental health. And the and mental health was a conscious add on that sentence. And I wrestled with that at the time because I really was debating adding that phrase. I was like, are people going to see that and say, why is he talking about mental health? It's like, is something wrong with him? Is it a sign of weakness? You know, should we worry about Paul, you know, his mental health on it? And we went with it. We added it to that one. And we also added checking in on the mental health of our people and our colleagues and our friends. But the other parts of that, of having boundaries and getting out and, you know, fresh air every day and, you know, exercising and all those other things, I just find this time just really difficult. And as much as I'm helping others and, you know, trying to champion the cause for everyone else, for myself, it's definitely a struggle. And I'm definitely not on the winning side of that struggle right now. And I'm just trying to pick up habits and trying to like trick myself into it. Like, you know, Molly was saying, you know, hey, you know, we setting time on our calendar where the meetings end earlier, you know, and not just using that extra 5 minutes of sitting at your desk and just doing email till the next call starts, actually getting up and doing something or walking away, not eating, going and grabbing food and walking back and eating in front of your monitor. So yeah, so you know, at some point I would love to have a bigger conversation about how everyone is kind of addressing some of those challenges, and you know, any lessons that we can learn from that I could personally learn from that, I would really welcome.
Paul, thank you for being so authentic and vulnerable and sharing the story about, you know, not doing great with self-care, but wanting to work towards that. And I think, again, that's something that we can relate to, that it's particularly when you are a leader, or when you're a parent, or you're in charge of, you know, aging parents, that you feel responsible for taking care of everyone else's needs before your own. But to recognize and to hold yourself to really investing and leaning into that self-care, so important. I know I turned 40 actually on the day that the global pandemic was announced, March 11th last year. That was my birthday. Quite the birthday present. And I remember I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this whole year of self-care, you know, for my 40th birthday. Let me just tell you, it didn't happen, because anything I was planning to do for self-care was off the table, you know. Doctor's appointments, no massage, no, you know, haircut, like all that went by the wayside. So when I turned 41 this year, I said before the month was up, I was going to do it. And I lined up all the doctor's appointments I had held off on, and I just went for it. I even let my daughter cut my hair, and she's 13. So that was bold and spicy. But I think that you do what you got to do, but being able to lean into that, recognize it's important, commit to it, is so powerful. And it's made a huge difference for me too. It's something I'm still working on. But kind of on that front, though, we got a really great question in the Q&A from Julia, and I think I'm going to direct this one to you, Monica. She says, do you agree that even after all this, individuals still need to be their own mental health advocates? Or do you perceive that senior management and thought leaders, et cetera, are increasingly educated, aware, sensitive to mental health maintenance, and will more readily accommodate workers putting boundaries on work? I know it's a sensitive topic and there's so many intricacies. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so first I would say I don't, and I speak for the three of us, I don't think any of us are experts in this particular space, right? So we're probably novices at best. But for me, I think everyone's accountable, right? In terms of the individual, you've got to understand where you are, what's working for you, what's not working for you, how you're feeling. You've got to check in with yourself almost. And I think for senior management, we also have to be aware of that with our individuals, a lot with our people. Sometimes we will dive right into the business talk, but what we do in a lot of our calls is we start with a little, you know what I mean, how are you doing? And make sure we start with that piece of things. I don't think there's enough education. I don't think the senior management is fully educated on a lot of the aspects of this. But I think that we're getting there, right? I think that it's becoming more prevalent. People are understanding, and there's more support, right? I think for people these days than probably than there were a few years ago. And so it's a journey. And I think, the pandemic has probably accelerated this journey for individuals and for management. And now we just got to keep going down that path.
So in terms of mental health, I definitely hear you that the onus of responsibility is on everyone. It's on the individual, it's on the coworkers, it's on the leaders, it's on the organization to be aware and mindful. Because we're celebrating Digital Wellness Day today, I want to look at that question through a digital wellness lens as well, because one of the things that we know is that connected device usage has gone up by 46% in the last year with the shift to remote and hybrid work. And we know the pressures people are facing. I think in America, it's 50% of Americans feel like they have to check their email after 11 p.m. at night because of global time zones or pressure from their superiors. It sounds like the IBM culture is perhaps a bit different, but in terms of digital wellness, how does IBM navigate being a digital organization and having to communicate about technology and on technology while still maintaining wellness? I don't know who wants to take that question, but anybody can go for it.
Well, I'll start. I'll just start on it. And then again, I think one thing that I do feel a lot of times is a lot of the pressure that we have in our work lives in particular is self-imposed. It's largely who we are and the expectations that we have on ourselves to be our best, to do our best, to, we're in the services business, so we serve our clients and we want to make sure that we're always being of service. That's what I tell people, that's my calling. I got into services to be of service. So there is a lot of self-imposed pressure to make sure that you're not missing anything or something's going on. But just like we wrote in the pledge, it's like set those boundaries, and everyone outside of you will respect those boundaries. So I find myself a lot of times in I think from a leadership perspective also, we have to be really attentive to the example that we set. So for example, like I've got many members of my team, when they go on vacation throughout the year, that they'll want to get on a call. It's like, well, this is too important. Aren't you on vacation? It's like, yeah, this is too important a call. So I've enjoyed using this from time to time, the WebEx expel feature, to expel someone from a call. And then you're being exited. You're being exited from this call, and we're not admitting you back. So go enjoy your vacation. And setting boundaries like that. And for me, like I don't have my phone within 6 inches of myself or 12 inches of myself. Whenever I go to sleep, right? So it's not in my room. It's in a separate room in the house. It's part of the boundaries that I try to set. And if the trade-off is that I wake up with more messages that were unanswered, so be it. But again, from a leadership perspective, it's like if I send someone a message when I know they're on vacation, they feel compelled to answer it. If I start sending emails at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, responding to someone, they feel compelled to respond at 4 or 5 in the morning, because otherwise the message sat there. And I think we just have to be sensitive to the example that we set. Monica said it before, with even the simple thing of being on camera. I've noticed that, like, when I have meetings, like I most of the time I want to be on camera because I want people to see me and I want to see them. I want to try to maintain some sense of human connection in this crazy COVID world. But I also recognize the reverse of that it's inadvertently putting pressure on people that if I'm on camera, they feel that they need to be on camera. So there are definitely times in meetings where I just go off camera and then I watch all the lenses close, like instantly. So it's like, oh, thank God we don't have to stay on camera. He turned his camera off. So I think one thing is just for all of us to be cognizant of the example that we set in our day-to-day actions and the cascading effect that can have. Respect those boundaries when people set them and champion them. And cherish them.
Well, I love that new feature about Expel. I did not know that, but I am now a huge feature of WebEx. A huge fan of them. That's amazing. So we have about 6 minutes left here. So if anyone has any questions that they want to get in, this is your last opportunity for now. But in the interim, one other final question, and that would just be, you know that you've had a positive ripple effect within IBM and that this has been picked up and garnered lots of global attention. Have you seen any other organizations that you know of pick up other work from home pledges or come up with some innovative iterations of what you've done? Share with me some of the ripple effect that you've heard about.
Yeah, I'll say I've shared this with a couple of organizations I'm a part of outside of IBM. Women in America being one of them, where Amy, I first met you. And I've seen a lot of other women in that organization share it with their companies, ask me for, the source files so that they could modify something for themselves. I think we saw on LinkedIn, what was it, a week or two ago, someone from, I think, Pfizer had shared it with their organization, took the pledge publicly. Like I said earlier, we just keep seeing it pop up all over the place. People will find it, it resonates with them, they'll share it with their companies, even if it's just sharing it with their teams within an organization. I love to see how others are finding relevance in it for themselves, their teams, adapting it and sharing it. It really, it's touching to see.
That's beautiful. Paul or Monica, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, go ahead, Monica. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add just some of the creativity from some of our teams. So we've had teams take the pledge, but do videos where you've got like 50 people and each one is reading different pieces of the pledge. We have had universities reach out. And I think what it is it sparks something. And I think one of my messages to people would be that you can drive more change than you really even imagine. Just that, and I think it comes from that place of where the pledge started, which is listening and trying to understand what people were dealing with and then be authentic about it. And people, that really resonates with people. So that's something that we're seeing. And it's a year from now, we're still getting new people saying, hey, I've just heard about this. How can I leverage it? And, I think it has gone beyond certainly what we would have ever imagined.
Yeah, and I'll just build on that. It's for me, it just warms my heart that, like, so now we're 14 months into it, that our Slack channel is still up. I don't know that any one of us, like, we haven't posted in the Slack channel maybe since the original pledge, when it first started, maybe that first week. But when it turned to 2021, I've noticed that I go and I see it every day. I just watch to see, like, oh, there's still people pledging, but people reaffirming their pledge. So they took it last year, and it's just, hey, it's a year since I pledged, and I just want to reaffirm my commitment to this set of principles. And I think that's really special. And like Molly said, I love when I get a request or someone pings me from another company and just saying, hey, I just came across this, and even like a year later, that senior executive from Pfizer who just saw this a year later and, now is taking the pledge with his entire team. It's just wonderful to see. And, we're just thrilled that, again, kind of the simple intent of just making life a little bit easier for everyone is, working. And it didn't take much of the listening and one email and one Slack post to get it started. So,
wow.
Super proud.
And it all starts with one small action, and the three of you should be very, very proud of how your actions have rippled out to have a global effect on the world. I want to thank all three of you. I think that our time here is closing out, but it has been such a meaningful conversation and one that's inspiring and encouraging for me to continue to work with the organizations I influence or am a part of to bring something similar. So if other people are listening, don't be shy about bringing this up in your own organization, whether you're the senior leader or you are somebody in management or you are on the front line. I think there is an important role for each of us to play in sparking these kind of conversations. And before we run off too far, I did want to share with you for individuals who are interested in some more strategies for how to bring digital wellness to your organizations. The Digital Wellness Institute released this playbook for thriving in the remote work era with, it's very thin, but it's packed with some really actionable strategies for communication charters and thinking about values. And it could be a wonderful starting place for you if you've never thought about doing a pledge and you need to kind of build some team momentum around that idea. It might be a good place to start. So you can find that on our website at digitalwellnessinstitute.com. And for anybody who is interested in learning a little bit more about the IBM Work From Home Pledge, Molly or Andrea or Monica, someone could pop in the chat one more time, just so it shows up at the bottom, the link to where they can see the IBM Work From Home Pledge. That would be great. But for now, we will close out. Thank you so much for that, Andrea. We'll close out for now. Again, thank you for taking the time and energy to celebrate Digital Wellness Day with us and share your wisdom and expertise. Really appreciate all that you brought to this conversation.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Amy.
And thank you, Amy,
you.
for having us.
Mhm.
Awesome. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.